Dr. Sarah Chen wiped sweat from her brow as she carefully brushed dust from the peculiar markings etched into the cave wall. The afternoon sun cast long shadows through the dig site's entrance, but she barely noticed the time. These petroglyphs were unlike anything she'd seen in her 15 years of archaeological work. They seemed to shift and change depending on the angle of view, suggesting an impossibly advanced carving technique for their estimated age of over 300,000 years. Dr. Chen, her assistant's panicked voice echoed through the cave. "You need to see this." Sarah rushed to the entrance, nearly dropping her brush. The sight that greeted her stopped her heart for a moment. Massive shapes were descending through the clouds above Shanghai in the distance. Dark, angular vessels that dwarfed the city's tallest skyscrapers. As she watched, brilliant points of light erupted from their hulls. "Oh God," she whispered, recognizing the implications before her mind could fully process what she was seeing. First contact, but not the way humanity had hoped. The points of light reached the city. Silent flashes bloomed like new suns, and even from hundreds of kilometers away, she felt the impact tremors through her boots. Shanghai, a city of 25 million people, disappeared in clouds of fire and debris. Her satellite phone buzzed, a global emergency alert. Similar ships were appearing over cities worldwide. Humanity's first contact with alien life had come not with greeting or diplomacy, but with fire from the sky. "Pack up everything," she ordered her team, forcing herself to focus through the shock. "All data, all samples, everything we can carry." The petroglyphs might seem insignificant now, but years of research had convinced her they held some deeper meaning. She wouldn't let humanity's scientific legacy die in fire. As her team scrambled to save their work, the ground beneath them began to vibrate. At first, Sarah thought it was more distant explosions, but this was different. A steady, rising hum that seemed to come from deep within the earth itself. Her equipment began registering massive energy spikes from below. "Everyone out," she shouted, but before they could move, the cave floor cracked open. Instead of revealing natural rock, the fissure exposed seamless metal walls marked with the same shifting patterns as the petroglyphs. The humming grew louder as lines of light traced through the ancient markings. A holographic display suddenly burst from the exposed metal, showing a three-dimensional star map. A computerized voice spoke in a language that made Sarah's head spin. It seemed to change dialects mid-sentence, cycling through what she recognized as Proto-Indo-European, Ancient Sumerian, and dozens of other dead languages before settling into modern Mandarin. Orbital defense grid activation detected. Indigenous population under Class 1 attack protocol. Activating emergency protocols. Seeking authorized user. Sarah's mind raced. The patterns in the petroglyphs, the impossible precision of their carving, the myths she'd studied of advanced ancient civilizations. It all clicked into place. "This is what we've been looking for," she breathed. "Not just cave paintings. They're keys. Instructions. Warnings." Her satellite phone buzzed again. The alien ships, the official alert now identified them as the Xari Dominion, were launching drop ships. Ground forces would arrive within hours. Dr. Chen, one of her graduate students, pointed at the hologram. "Look." The star map had zoomed in on Earth, highlighting similar energy signatures activating across the globe. Their dig site was just one node in a vast network of something their ancestors had left behind, something that had been waiting for this moment. The computer spoke again. Genetic profile scan initiated, searching for compatibility with stellar legacy protocols. A beam of light swept over Sarah and her team. She felt a tingling sensation as it passed over her, followed by a sharp pain in her palm. A small drop of blood welled up from what looked like a precision puncture. Primary user candidate identified. Dr. Sarah Chen, your genetic profile matches legacy parameters within acceptable variants. Emergency authorization granted due to ongoing hostile action. Warning: full system access requires completion of qualification trials. Do you accept initialization? Through the cave entrance, she could see more fire blooming over the horizon. Humanity was facing extinction on its first day of confirmed alien contact. Whatever this system was, whatever their ancestors had left behind, it was their only hope. "I accept," she said firmly. The metal floor beneath them began to descend like an elevator, taking them deeper into the earth as blast doors of the same strange metal sealed above them. The hologram expanded, showing detailed schematics of what appeared to be massive weapons systems, defense platforms, and technologies she couldn't begin to comprehend. "Welcome, Inheritor," the computer said. "Initialization of the stellar legacy begins now. May you prove wiser than your ancestors." The descent seemed endless. Sarah and her team watched through transparent sections of the elevator walls as they passed layer after layer of technology that shouldn't exist. Vast chambers filled with dormant machines, halls lined with crackling energy conduits, and storage vaults containing what looked like spacecraft. "This is impossible," Dr. Marcus Webb, her xenolinguistics expert, muttered as he frantically recorded everything on his tablet. This facility would have shown up on deep ground scanning. The Chinese government has mapped this entire region. Unless it didn't want to be found, Sarah replied, studying the flowing scripts that covered every surface. They shifted and changed like living things, each pattern seeming to tell a different story. "Look at the linguistic evolution in these markings. They're teaching us how to read them in real time." The elevator finally stopped at what the displays indicated was 4 kilometers below the surface. The doors opened into a vast circular chamber that defied physics. Its walls seemed to bend space itself, making it impossible to judge its true size. A deep boom echoed through the facility. The computer's voice returned. "Warning. Hostile forces have detected activation energy signature. Sari dropships approaching. Estimated facility breach in 20 minutes. Can't you defend against them?" Sarah asked. "You're supposed to be some kind of defense system, right? Full defensive capabilities require authorized user certification through trials. Current emergency authorization permits basic facility protection only. However, data packet available regarding immediate threat." A hologram materialized, showing detailed scans of their attackers. The Xari were reptiloid humanoids, their bodies covered in armor that seemed to blend organic and technological components. But what caught Sarah's attention was their weapons. Some of them bore markings surprisingly similar to those in the facility. "That's impossible," she breathed. "Unless..." Another boom, closer this time. The computer announced, "Hostile forces deploying plasma cutters. Outer barriers breaching." "Show me everything you can about the Xari," Sarah ordered. The chamber filled with historical data, star maps, battle records, and genetic analyses spanning thousands of years. Her eyes widened as she pieced it together. They've been here before. During the time of our ancestors. These weapons they're using, they're degraded versions of the same technology we're standing in. The facility shuddered as another explosion hit closer. Through the security feeds, they could see a Xari strike team burning through the outer doors. Their leader stood out, taller than the others, with distinctive red markings on his armor. "Commander Vexkar," the computer identified. "Tactical analysis suggests 97% probability he carries dormant legacy genetic markers." Sarah's mind raced. "You're saying he's connected to this place too? Like me?" "Affirmative. Historical records indicate significant genetic engineering of both human and Xari species by legacy builders. Purpose: unknown. Possible experiment or preservation protocol." More explosions. The Xari were getting closer. Sarah made a decision. "Can you communicate with them?" "Affirmative." "Then tell them." She took a deep breath. "Tell them that this place belongs to both our peoples. Tell them their commander carries the same genetic markers I do. Make them understand we're supposed to find this together." The facility was silent for a moment. Then, message transmitted. "Warning. Commander Vexkar's vital signs show significant stress. Possibility of violent reaction. 78%. They waited tensely as the Xari burned through the final door. Commander Vexkar entered first, his plasma rifle trained on Sarah's group. He was massive up close, his scales shifting color slightly with each movement. But his eyes, they looked almost human. "You lie," he snarled in surprisingly good English. "The legacy is Xari. Our ancestors left it for us to reclaim our rightful place as rulers of this sector." "Then why did it activate for me?" Sarah stepped forward, ignoring her team's protests. "Look around you, Commander. Really look. These aren't just weapons or defenses. This is a library. A museum. A record of something much bigger than either of our species remembers." Vexkar's rifle wavered slightly. Sarah could see the confusion in his eyes as they darted around the chamber, taking in the shifting patterns that seemed to call to something deep in his genetic memory. "The trials," the computer announced suddenly. "They begin now. All candidates present. Sealing chamber." Before anyone could react, energy fields sprang up between the humans and Xari, not separating them, but creating a maze-like pattern that forced them to stay in mixed groups. "First trial parameters set," the computer continued. "Survival and cooperation test begins in 3 minutes. Failure will result in termination of all present." Sarah and Vexkar stared at each other through the energy fields, both realizing they had no choice. Whatever their ancestors had left behind, they would have to discover it together, or die trying. The chamber transformed around them, walls shifting like liquid metal to create a labyrinth of corridors and rooms. Sarah found herself separated from most of her team, trapped in a section with Commander Vexkar and one of his warriors. The computer's voice echoed through the space. "First trial begins. Purpose: evaluate capability for cooperation and wisdom in use of power. Historical context download initiating." Sarah gasped as images flooded her mind, memories that weren't hers, yet felt intimately familiar. She saw great cities that spanned continents, ships that sailed between stars, and 2 species, human and Xari, working together to build wonders. Beside her, Vexkar growled in confusion. "These visions, they cannot be real. The Xari have always been warriors. Conquerors." "No," Sarah whispered, understanding flowing through her as the download continued. "You were scientists once. Philosophers. The warrior culture was engineered. A military experiment that went wrong." The first chamber sealed behind them, and a holographic puzzle appeared. A complex network of energy conduits that needed routing to power something deeper in the facility. But the controls were split, requiring simultaneous operation from both sides of the room. "You expect me to trust a human?" Vexkar snarled, but his voice held more uncertainty than anger now. "I expect you to want answers," Sarah replied, studying the puzzle. "These patterns, they're the same as the corrupted technology your people use. Don't you want to know why?" Working together was awkward at first. The Xari warrior kept his weapon trained on Sarah, while Vexkar reluctantly followed her suggestions on the power routing. But as they progressed through more chambers, each requiring increasingly complex cooperation, something began to change. The historical downloads continued, revealing more with each success. They saw the Great War that had nearly destroyed both species, not fought between humans and Xari, but by both against something else, something that had triggered failsafes in the military protocols, turning the Xari into permanent warriors. "The genetic engineering," Vexkar said suddenly as they solved another puzzle. "It wasn't to make us stronger, it was to save what was left of who we were. And it's degrading," Sarah realized, seeing the patterns. "That's why your people are becoming more aggressive with each generation. The fail-safes are failing." They reached a chamber that stopped them cold. A massive hologram showed a star system filled with wreckage, the remains of the ancient war. But it wasn't just debris. There were ships out there, still waiting in hibernation. Ships that would wake when the legacy was claimed. "The weapons aren't the true inheritance," Sarah breathed. "They're just the key to something bigger." The computer spoke again. "First trial completed. Cooperation achieved. Beginning neural pattern analysis. Beams of light swept over both species, studying their brainwave patterns during the trial. Sarah felt knowledge continuing to flow into her mind. Technical specifications, historical records, and most importantly, the location of other facilities around the world. There are 5 more sites, she told Vexcar, each with its own trial, its own piece of the legacy. We have to reach them all to unlock the full system. And if we fail? The commander asked, though she suspected he already knew the answer. Then neither of our species will survive what's coming. Sarah met his eyes. You've seen the records now. You know this isn't just about our peoples fighting each other. There's something else out there, something that nearly destroyed both our species before. And I think it's coming back. Vexcar was silent for a long moment. Finally, he lowered his weapon completely. My superiors will not accept this truth. They are too far gone to the corruption. Then help me, Sarah said. Help me reach the other facilities. Help me save both our peoples. Before he could respond, alarms blared through the facility. The computer's voice was urgent. Warning. Multiple Xari capital ships entering orbit. Planetary bombardment imminent. Secondary facilities activating emergency protocols. Time window for completion of trials. 72 hours. Sarah and Vexcar looked at each other, both knowing they had no choice. Whatever their ancestors had left behind, whatever truth waited in the other facilities, they had 3 days to uncover it. 3 days to prevent history from repeating itself. I will help you, Vexcar said finally. Not for your species or mine, but for the truth. We were meant to be more than this. The facility rumbled as the first bombardment began far above. Their time was running out, and the next trial would be even harder. But for the first time since the invasion began, Sarah felt hope. The legacy wasn't just weapons or technology. It was a chance to remember who they were meant to be. The UN emergency bunker buzzed with frantic activity as military leaders and scientists tried to coordinate humanity's defense. Sarah stood before the assembled council, her archaeological credentials now seeming almost quaint compared to the knowledge flowing through her enhanced consciousness. There are 5 more facilities, she explained, pointing to locations on the global hologram. Pacific Ocean floor, Amazon rainforest, Sahara Desert, Antarctic ice sheet, and one beneath the Himalayas. Each contains a piece of the legacy system. Admiral Chen, no relation, leaned forward. And we're supposed to trust the word of a Xari commander. The same species currently bombing our cities. Vexcar stood proudly despite the armed guards surrounding him. If I wanted to deceive you, I would not have shared the override codes that saved your Moscow garrison from orbital strike. He's right, Sarah interjected. The knowledge transfer from the first facility proves everything. The Xari aren't our true enemy. They're victims of ancient military protocols gone wrong. And we have less than 60 hours to activate all facilities before those protocols complete their corruption. The council muttered among themselves until General Santos spoke up. You have evidence these facilities contain defensive capabilities. Sarah nodded. More than that. Each one is actually a massive starship designed to form an interlocked planetary defense grid. But activating them wrong could tear the Earth apart. We need to follow the trial sequence exactly. Then you have your resources, Santos declared over other council members' protests. Whatever you need. I'm not sitting idle while aliens bomb our planet back to the Stone Age. Within hours, Operation Legacy launched. 5 teams, each led by a paired human and Xari commander, racing to reach the facilities. Sarah and Vexcar took the Pacific site, a 13-kilometer descent to a facility deep in the Mariana Trench. Their submarine shuddered as depth charges from pursuing Xari ships exploded around them. The Xari High Command had branded Vexcar a traitor, placing a death mark on any who followed him. They're using pulse charges, Vexcar growled, studying the tactical display, designed to disrupt legacy tech signatures. They know what we seek. Sarah focused on the facility's beckoning signal. The corrupted protocols are fighting back. like antibodies attacking a cure. A massive shape loomed in their sonar. A Xari hunter-killer submarine. But something was wrong with its profile. Sarah gasped as enhancement data flowed through her mind. "They're using salvaged legacy tech," she warned. "But it's unstable. The corruption is affecting their systems." The enemy vessel fired. Its energy beam warped and unstable. Their smaller sub dove, barely avoiding the blast. But the near miss revealed something extraordinary. A massive structure rising from the ocean floor. The second facility. Vexcar breathed. "It's bigger than the first." The structure was an inverted pyramid of the same shifting metal, its surface covered in pulsing lines of power. As they approached, a docking bay arised open, beckoning them inside. They had barely landed when the facility's systems spoke. "Warning. Hostile forces attempting forced entry. Legacy protocols corrupted. Beginning facility lockdown." Through the observation windows, they watched in horror as the Xari vessel attacked the facility directly. Its warped legacy weapons tore into the ancient metal, causing cascading reactions. "They'll destroy everything," Vexcar snarled. Generations of wisdom lost to madness. Sarah grabbed his arm. "No. Look." The facility was responding. Damaged sections flowed like liquid, repairing themselves. More importantly, each blast was being absorbed, analyzed, and adapted to. It's not just defending itself, Sarah realized. It's learning. Everything the corrupted legacy tech does teaches it how to cure the corruption. But they had no time to study it further. The facility's voice returned. Second trial commencing. Neural interface required. Warning. Candidate survival rate from historical records, 62%. Sarah and Vexcar shared a look. The fate of two civilizations hung on their success. Whatever the neural interface would show them, whatever test they had to face, failure wasn't an option. Above them, more Xari ships entered firing range. The countdown to planetary bombardment ticked ever lower. And somewhere in the darkness of space, something far worse than their current troubles was stirring, drawn by the legacy's awakening. They stepped into the neural chamber together, human and Xari united by a shared past neither had known existed. The second trial was about to begin, and this time, the test would reach directly into their minds. The neural interface felt like drowning in memories. Sarah gasped as foreign thoughts and experiences flooded her consciousness. Beside her, Vexcar's scaled skin rippled with stress as they both experienced the full weight of their species' shared history. Neural synchronization at 30%, the facility announced. Beginning deep pattern recognition. The vision started slowly, familiar scenes from their own lives. Sarah saw herself as a child, discovering her first archaeological find in her backyard. But something was different. In the memory, the broken pottery piece bore the same shifting patterns as the legacy facilities. The markers were everywhere, she realized. Our whole lives, we've been subtly guided toward this moment. Vexcar's memories flowed next, his military training, his rise through the ranks. But now they could see the corruption at work, the way the ancient protocols twisted natural aggression into something darker. Generation after generation of Xari, their true nature buried deeper under layers of engineered rage. "We were warriors," Vexcar growled, "but not like this. We fought to protect, to defend, not to dominate." The neural link suddenly pulsed, dragging them deeper. They weren't just seeing memories now, they were experiencing the original conflict that had led to the legacy's creation. A vast armada of pitch-black ships, moving between the stars like a plague. The combined fleets of humanity and the Xari fighting desperately against them. The void minds, the facility's voice echoed in their shared consciousness. A race of beings that fed on consciousness itself. They could not be reasoned with, could not be stopped. Until the vision shifted to show them the terrible choice their ancestors had made. The weapons they had created were designed not to destroy the void minds, but to fundamentally alter them, to forcibly evolve them into something that could feel empathy. But the process would have changed the weapons creators too. They couldn't do it, Sarah understood. They couldn't risk changing what made them human. So they ran. Vexcar finished. Hid their weapons. Left us these trials to prove we're ready for the responsibility they couldn't bear. The neural link blazed with new intensity. Second trial commencing. Candidates must face their species' fundamental fears. The visions turned darker. Sarah watched humanity achieve the power of the legacy, only to become worse than the Void Minds had been. She saw Earth's fleet spreading across the galaxy, enslaving or destroying any civilization they encountered. The darkness in human nature amplified by power without wisdom. Vexcar faced his own species' nightmare, the complete removal of the warrior protocols, leaving them defenseless, their civilization collapsing as they lost all drive and purpose, the fear that without the corruption, they would be nothing. It's not real. Sarah fought through the vision. These are just possibilities, fears. We can choose a different path. The facility's voice cut through their shared nightmare. Analysis. Both candidates displaying resistance to corruption scenarios. Neural synchronization now at 70%. Beginning final phase. The visions merge. They saw their species as they were meant to be. Humanity's creativity and adaptability combined with Xari's strength and discipline. Two peoples whose differences made them stronger together. But achieving that future would require something neither side had fully mastered: trust. Suddenly, alerts blared through the facility. Warning. Multiple legacy facilities detecting activation globally. Unauthorized users attempting forced entry. Through their neural link, Sarah and Vexcar saw the truth. Human separatists, led by Sarah's former mentor, were trying to seize control of the other facilities. They had learned enough from the first activation to bypass some security measures. They'll trigger a cascading failure, Sarah realized in horror. The legacy systems will interpret it as an attack and initiate planetary defense protocols. They'll tear the Earth apart. Then we must complete this trial. Vexcar's determination flowed through their link. Now, together, they pushed through the last barrier in their shared consciousness. Their minds touched something vast and ancient, the true heart of the legacy. Not weapons or ships or technology, but understanding. The knowledge of how to bridge the gap between what they were and what they could become. The neural interface released them, as the facility announced. Second trial completed. Genetic restoration protocols unlocked. Warning. Multiple hostile forces converging on location. Sarah and Vexcar stumbled from the interface chamber, forever changed by what they had experienced. They were no longer simply human and Xari. They were something new, the first of their kind to remember the truth. The other teams, Sarah grabbed the facility's controls. We have to warn them about the separatists, about everything. But as alerts continued to blare, they realized time was running out. The race to reach the remaining facilities had become even more desperate. Now they weren't just fighting the Xari fleet or the corrupted protocols. They were fighting their own people's darkest impulses. The legacy had shown them the path to salvation. But walking it would require both species to face their deepest fears and overcome them together. The Antarctic facility was unlike anything they'd seen before. While the other sites had been clearly military in nature, this one hummed with different energy. The walls weren't covered in weapon schematics or battle plans, but with impossibly complex mathematical formulas and star charts spanning millions of years. This is wrong, Sarah said as their team made their way deeper into the structure. The architecture is different. The patterns don't match the legacy format. Vexcar nodded, his enhanced senses on high alert. It feels older, more primitive and more advanced at the same time. They reached a vast spherical chamber whose walls seemed to be made of pure light. In its center floated a cluster of crystalline structures that pulsed with internal radiance. As they approached, the crystals began to move, assembling themselves into a roughly humanoid shape. "Welcome, children," a voice spoke directly into their minds. "We are the archivists. We have been waiting a very long time for this moment." Sarah felt knowledge flowing into her consciousness, not forcefully like the neural interface, but gentle, like remembering something long forgotten. You're not part of the legacy system, she realized. You're what our ancestors were running from. The crystalline being shifted, its form becoming more defined. Not running from, running towards. We are the gardeners, the watchers, the shepherds of consciousness itself. Your ancestors understood that they were not ready for what they had discovered, so they asked us to help prepare their descendants. The trials, Vexkar growled. The genetic modifications, the separation of our species. It was all you. All part of the great game, the archivist confirmed. 100,000 species across 1 million worlds, all being guided toward their potential. Your ancestors' legacy weapons were just one piece of a much larger design. Suddenly, alerts blared through the facility. The separatist forces had reached the Himalayan facility, and the Xeri fleet was beginning its final bombardment pattern. They were running out of time. Why tell us this now? Sarah demanded. Why not help us stop what's happening? The crystalline being's form rippled with something like amusement. But we are helping. Every challenge you face was carefully designed. Every choice presented exactly when needed. Even this conversation is part of the test. Understanding dawned on Sarah. The void minds. They weren't real, were they? They were a construct, something to unite our species against. The threat was real, the archivist corrected, but not in the way you imagine. The darkness between stars is filled with dangers your ancestors glimpsed. But the true threat has always been simpler. The darkness within consciousness itself. The tendency of sentient life to destroy itself once it reaches a certain level of advancement. More alerts. The separatists had begun their attempt to activate the legacy weapons. Cascading energy readings suggested they were minutes away from triggering a planetary catastrophe. We don't have time for philosophy, Vexkar snarled. Our worlds are about to tear themselves apart. Then you understand the final trial. The archivist's form began to fade. The legacy weapons were never meant to be used. They are a key to unlock something far more important, the ability to heal consciousness itself, to cure the darkness that divides species from within and between each other. Sarah's enhanced mind raced through the implications. The genetic modifications, the warrior protocols, they're not corruption. They're symptoms. Our species did this to themselves, and the legacy is showing us how to undo it. Correct. The archivist was barely visible now. But using that knowledge requires sacrifice. Are you prepared to give up everything you think you know about yourselves? To become something neither human nor Xari, but something new entirely? Before they could respond, the chamber shuddered with impact. The separatists had launched their attack run on the Antarctic facility. Through their enhanced senses, Sarah and Vexkar could feel the legacy network approaching critical failure. The archivist's final words echoed in their minds as its form dissolved completely. Choose wisely, children. You have all the pieces now. The question is not whether you can use the weapons, but whether you can choose not to. They stood in the chamber, the fate of 2 civilizations hanging on their next decision. The legacy weapons powered up around the planet, waiting for final authorization. And in orbit, something massive was awakening. Drawn by the energy of their conflict, exactly as the archivists had planned. The true endgame was about to begin, and the weapons they had fought so hard to claim might be the very things they needed to destroy to save themselves. The global legacy network hummed with apocalyptic power. Through their enhanced consciousness, Sarah and Vexkar could feel the weapons charging at each facility, enough firepower to reshape the solar system itself. The separatists had seized control of 2 sites. The Xari fleet was beginning its final attack run. And in orbit, something vast and ancient was stirring. We have to make a choice, Sarah said, her mind racing through possibilities as data streamed through her enhanced awareness. The legacy weapons could end this war in seconds. And corrupt both our species forever, Vexkar added, his own consciousness expanded by their shared connection to the network. We would survive, but as something worse than what we're fighting. The Antarctic facilities displays showed them everything. The separatist forces led by Sarah's mentor, Dr. Hammond, preparing to trigger a weapon they couldn't possibly understand. The Xeri fleet, its ships now twisted by corrupted legacy tech, moving into final attack position. And above it all, a shadow spreading across the stars themselves. Multiple legacy facilities reporting critical power fluctuation. The network announced, weapon systems approaching automated release threshold. Time to planetary defense protocol activation, 3 minutes. Sarah reached for the command interface, then hesitated. The knowledge flowing through her enhanced mind showed her exactly what the weapons could do. They wouldn't just destroy the Xeri fleet. They would rewrite the consciousness of every being they touched, forcing evolution in directions that consciousness wasn't meant to go. There has to be another way, she muttered. Then her eyes widened. Wait, the archivist said the weapons were a key, not the solution itself. Vexcar moved to join her at the controls. The genetic modifications, the warrior protocols, they're all connected to the same base code in the legacy system. Which means Sarah's fingers flew across the interface, following patterns she somehow knew by heart. We can use the weapon's energy to power something else, not to attack or defend, but to heal. Warning klaxons blared as the facility registered their attempted modification. Alert. Unauthorized alteration of legacy protocols detected. Security override in progress. They're trying to stop us, Vexcar snarled, his warrior instincts fighting against the corrupted protocols in his blood. The weapons programming sees this as an attack. Sarah didn't stop working, because it is an attack on the very thing that's been keeping our species prisoner. The darkness the archivists warned us about. Through their neural link to the network, they could feel the separatists beginning their weapon activation sequence. Dr. Hammond's voice crackled over the facility's comm system. Sarah, stop. You don't understand what's at stake. Humanity needs these weapons to survive. No, Sarah replied, her voice firm. We need to remember who we really are. Both our species do. She turned to Vexcar. Help me. Your warrior protocols give you access to the base legacy code. If we work together. The Xeri commander placed his hands on the interface. Their minds merged through the neural link, human insight combining with Xeri strength to force the weapon's energy into new configurations. Warning, the facility announced. Legacy weapon systems experiencing total protocol inversion. Catastrophic failure imminent. Not failure, Sarah corrected as she felt the change beginning. Evolution. The weapon's power surged through the network, but not as destruction. Instead, it became a wave of restoration, undoing the genetic locks and psychological barriers that had kept both species trapped in patterns of violence and fear. Through their enhanced senses, they felt the change rippling out. Xeri warriors paused in their attack as centuries of engineered rage began to fade. Human separatists stumbled as the darkness that had driven them to seek power at any cost was burned away. But the process wasn't finished. The shadow in orbit was descending, drawn by the massive energy release. Now they could see it clearly. A vast living ship, its surface shifting like oil on water. The true test, Vexcar realized. Everything else was preparation for this moment. The thing in orbit was what their ancestors had really been running from, not a physical enemy, but a reflection of consciousness's ultimate challenge. The darkness within given form, drawn to civilizations on the brink of transformation. They had seconds to make their final choice. The legacy weapons were still active, still capable of destroying the threat, but using them would mean embracing the very darkness they were fighting. Sarah looked at Vexcar, seeing in his eyes the same understanding. Together, they initiated the final command sequence, not to attack, but to complete the transformation their ancestors had begun. The price of tomorrow would be everything they had been, but the reward would be everything they could become. The transformation began as light, pure, impossible light that spread from the legacy facilities across the Earth and up into space. Sarah and Vexkar, their consciousness still linked through the network, felt every moment of the change rippling through both their species. The Xari fleet hung motionless in orbit as centuries of engineered rage dissolved. Warriors who had known nothing but battle felt the weight of forgotten memories. Art, music, philosophy, all the pieces of themselves that had been locked away by the protocols. On the ground, the separatist forces stopped their attack as the darkness that had driven them was burned away. Dr. Hammond's voice came through again, but changed. "Sarah, what have we done? What were we becoming?" But the greatest change came from above. The vast shadow ship, the manifestation of consciousness's darkness, met the wave of transformation. For a moment that felt like eternity, two forms of evolution faced each other, the path of power and destruction versus the path of healing and growth. "Look," Vexkar breathed as new data flowed through their enhanced senses. "It's not just our peoples being restored, the shadow itself." The thing in orbit was changing, its oil-slick surface beginning to crystallize. The darkness within consciousness wasn't being destroyed. It was being transformed, just as the archivists had planned. The shadow became light, and with it came understanding. This was their true purpose, Sarah realized. The archivists didn't create the trials to test us. They created them to help us test ourselves. Through their link to the legacy network, they felt the final pieces click into place. The weapons weren't weapons at all. They were tools of transformation, designed to help species face and overcome the darkness within themselves. Each civilization that faced the trials had to make the same choice: use power to destroy, or use it to heal. The crystalline form that had been the shadow ship descended through the atmosphere, its structure now similar to the archivists themselves. Its voice echoed in every enhanced mind on Earth. The cycle continues. The children remember. The game moves forward. Hours later, as the transformation completed, the full scope of change became clear. The Xari were no longer locked in their warrior protocols, but neither had they lost their strength and discipline. Humanity's darkness hadn't been erased, but transformed into something that could drive growth instead of destruction. In orbit, the legacy facilities revealed their final secret. They were seeds designed to grow into bridges between stars. Not weapons of war, but tools to help young civilizations join the greater community of consciousness. "We're going to need to learn to live together," Sarah said as she and Vexkar watched the first joint human-Xari team begin studying the transformed shadow ship. Actually live together, not just coexist. The Xari commander nodded, his scales now shifting with subtle colors that reflected his restored emotional range. "We will. Both our peoples remember who we truly are now, and who we can become." The archivists' crystalline forms appeared around them one last time. The great game continues. 1,000 species, each facing their own trials, their own darkness. And now you will help guide them, as we guided you. Sarah felt the truth of it in her enhanced consciousness. Earth was no longer just humanity's home, or a battlefield for the Xari. It was a beginning, the first of many worlds that would face this choice between power and wisdom, between destruction and transformation. The legacy weapons slept now, their energy converted into tools of growth and learning. But the real work was just beginning. Two species, transformed but not perfected, had to learn to work together, to build something new from the ashes of their conflict. In the Antarctic facility, now transformed into a center of learning, Sarah and Vexkar began their new role, teaching others how to use their enhanced consciousness not for power, but for understanding. The darkness between stars was still filled with challenges, but they would face them together. And somewhere in the depths of space, the archivists watched another world face its trials, another species approach its moment of choice. The great game continued, consciousness evolving one transformation at a time. The weapons of the past had become the tools of the future. And the children of two worlds looked up at the stars not with fear or hunger for conquest, but with hope and curiosity about what they would become together.